Hi everyone, I want to thank you so much for joining me today on Rachel Brandt's Designs. On today's video, I have a card for you guys. It's a card that I made for one of my colleagues. So this card, it measures 4¼ by 5½. The very first thing I decided to do is my pattern paper that I'm using, which is from Bo Bunny, the Altitude collection. I cut it down to 5½ by 3¾ and I decided just to kind of offset it towards, I wanted a little bit of my gray cardstock to show on the left hand side, so I decided to kind of offset it a little bit. I actually created this card probably about almost 4 weeks ago, but I just didn't have a chance to actually, put it together. But as they say, better late than never. So I just wanted to share with you guys this card. The next thing I decided to do is cut down this white recollection paper down to 1¾ by 4¼ The next thing I did is I'm going to stamp this thanks to it, and this stamp set I'm using is from Simon Says Stamp, hand lettered winter wishes. So since this was the first time that I had used this stamp set, actually this particular stamp, I decided I would use some scratch paper and just stamp it a couple of times, because the worst thing is to, stamp it on your project and it doesn't actually look good at all. You're not happy with it. So I just pulled out some scratch paper and I stamped it a couple of times just to ensure that it stamped well and I liked the overall coverage on the stamp. The ink that I'm using is from Simon Says Stamp, and it's their lavender ink, and I find that it matched quite nicely with the pattern paper, the Bo Bunny pattern paper that I had used for the front of my card. So I'm just stamping it towards the right hand side of my card. So I was happy with it, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adhere it to my card. So once again, my card base is 4¼ by 5½, and it's actually a portrait style card. I didn't want my sentiment to be right in the middle of my card, so I decided I would just adhere it towards the bottom of my card. So once I was happy with my placement, I wasn't quite sure if I just wanted to only use, this stamp set just things, or if I wanted to add something else to it. And since the stamp set came with some other, cute scenes, I decided just to add, they had a small so much. So I decided that I would take that, and instead of stamping it in purple, I would actually emboss it, use some white embossing powder. The great thing about this block that I'm actually using, it's from Martha Stewart and has these grid lines on it, and I find it's my go-to block anytime that I'm, stamping a sentiment, and it just helps you make sure that everything lines up straight. So it's one of my favorite blocks that I use. So I just pulled out here my embossing body that I used to put on my card just to help with any static on the card. And once again, I'm using some Versamark ink for my embossing. It's such a great ink for embossing. It's nice and juicy. And I find anytime I use it, I always get such great coverage with it. So it's one of my favorites to use. So the embossing powder I'm using today is from Hero Arts, and it's their white embossing powder. So I'm just going to sprinkle some on the bottom, and then I'm going to heat set it off camera. So now that I finished my embossing, I also decided to use the same embossing powder on this wood embellishment that I had just recently purchased from Michaels from the Recollection. I did actually 2 layers of embossing on it, because the very first layer I find that you could see, since it was a brown snowflake, I find you could see it underneath it. So just to ensure that, I just really wanted my white snowflake to really stand out, so I just did 2 layers of embossing on it. The great thing too, it had some cool texture, which unfortunately you're not going to be able to pick up, but it had some really cool texture, which the embossing white powder did kind of pick up. But overall, I was really happy with how the snowflake came out. So the next thing I'm just doing here is just using my medium matte to glue it down. I find this is a really nice strong glue, because the worst thing is to, glue it down on your card and it doesn't, falls off. So I find if you have that, or even if you use a hot glue gun, I find since it's a thick and heavy snowflake, thick glue is the best for it, so it doesn't fall off. So the next thing I decided to do is add some sequins to my card. I've had the sequins in my stash for a little while now. I had recently, I think I got it from one of my card kits, Simon Says Stamp card kits. So I decided just to kind of sprinkle them a couple places on my card. And once I was happy with where I had placed them down, I used my same medium mat to glue it down, because once again, you don't want it to fall off of your card. And actually, I forgot to mention that a lot of the products I'm using today is from the January 2015 card kit from Simon Says Stamp. When I was placing down these sequins onto my card, I could not seem to find my tweezers, so it took me a little while to actually place it down. And because I had these lovely Christmas nails on and they had grown out so much, I was just kind of struggling doing it. But yeah, I need to find my tweezers, because I find any little projects like this, I find it so much easier if you have a pair of tweezers. It makes your life a lot easier. So I need to find where I've placed my tweezers. Alright, so now that I have all of my sequins down, I wasn't sure if I just wanted to leave it like this, or if I wanted to add something else to it. So I decided to use this sticker set that came in the card kit. It's from Bo Bunny, the Altitude set. I really liked it. They look like postage stamps. So I decided to select the one that had a nice winter scene to it and just add it on top of my snowflake. And that was pretty much it for the card. So super cute, super simple. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And at the end of this video, I'll have some close-ups of what this card looks like.